Thank you all for joining us tonight. It is Friday night, Marriage Fit Friday. Congratulations, you made it to the weekend. So you are here with us, and tonight's topic is the relationship communication assessment. So communication is the foundation of any successful relationship. When couples communicate effectively, they are able to build trust, intimacy, and connection. So, however, even the strongest couples can experience communication challenges from time to time.
Mhm.
So, this is why for Marriage Fit Friday, we are going to help couples strengthen their relationships by offering a great tool for you to do and use.
Yeah, this tool is the communication assessment. We're really big on check ins, right? Relationship check ins. We talk about them before, but tonight specifically, we're doing a check in on your communication. So I think even if you aren't quite in a relationship, you will probably benefit from these questions that we're going to go through tonight. But in particular, this is geared towards our couples. So please utilize this communication assessment. It's a great tool to really help couples identify their strengths and weaknesses as communicators. This can be helpful for couples who are unaware of their communication patterns or who are struggling to communicate effectively.
Yep. A communication assessment can also help couples gain insight into their relationship.
Mhm.
So, for example, it can help couples identify areas of conflict, understand their attachment styles, and learn about their different communication needs.
Yeah, a good communication assessment should also help couples to learn how to have new communication skills and improve their existing skills. So, this is really helpful for couples to be able to communicate more clearly, openly, and definitely respectfully.
Yeah, and this is important because when couples communicate effectively, it can deepen their intimacy and connection. So, this is because effective communication helps couples to understand each other better, feel more supported, and trust each other more.
Yes. So, couples who are certainly better at communicating and are able to effectively communicate are certainly going to be able to resolve conflict in a healthier way and definitely be able to express their needs and their feelings clearly and of course be able to listen to each other empathetically. So that's what all of this is about tonight.
Yep. And during this assessment, you and your spouse will be able to go through a series of questions about your communication patterns, relationship dynamics, and individual communication needs. The results of the assessment can be used to provide you with personalized feedback and recommendations for how to improve your communication.
Yeah. So before we get started, here are some general tips about completing this assessment. First, of course, take the assessment when your spouse is present. So go ahead and get comfortable, get some pen and a paper. You may want to write these questions down and then ask your spouse the questions that we go through after the video. Or you can pause the video after each question we ask so that then you and your spouse are able to respond. Whatever works best for you, just, make sure that you both are comfortable and aware and ready to go.
Yep. Take breaks as needed. We have split this up into 5 sections because there are a lot of questions to go through. So give yourself a mental break whenever either of you feel like it's enough, or things get too heavy, or you just tired. You both should enjoy this assessment and not feel like it's a chore.
Right. So you don't have to do this assessment tonight. Again, like we said, you could write these questions down and do this actually maybe tomorrow or another day where you're more relaxed, or play this video back again when the time is right and go through the questions together. But both of you need to answer each question of this assessment or honestly and openly. The more information you provide, the more helpful the feedback will be and the more beneficial this assessment will be in general.
So stay focused on the present and avoid dwelling on the past hurts or disagreements.
Yeah.
So don't take this assessment when you two aren't in a good space.
Yeah, certainly not the time for that. You really want to stay open minded during this assessment and be willing to learn new things and to be open to changing your communication patterns as needed.
Lastly, remember the goals of this assessment is to help you and your spouse communicate more effectively and to strengthen your relationships. So let's begin.
Yep. So the first section, the general communication patterns. How often do you and your spouse communicate? It's important to communicate regularly with your spouse, even if it's just for a few minutes each day. Just making sure that you keep the lines of communication open really just shows that you are interested in what your spouse has to say and what they're going through. So, how often do you and your spouse communicate?
And what are your preferred methods of communication? Is it talking, texting, emailing, video chatting?
Yeah.
So some couples prefer to communicate in person while others prefer to communicate through text or email. It is important to find a communication method that works the best for you.
Yeah. And now we're going to dig into some questions now. So, again, this would apply to all types of relationships, long distance, whatever. Married, in a relationship, it certainly will apply no matter what stage you are in your relationship. So, let's begin on our serious, specific questions. How would you rate your communication in your relationship?
And are you satisfied with the communication in your relationship?
Do you feel like your relationship is stronger because of your communication?
And how has your communication changed over time?
Yes. Do you feel like your spouse listens to you when you talk?
Do you feel understood by your spouse?
hmm Be sure to pause whenever you need to and make sure that you're writing down these questions. This is really important. It's not our usual show of where we're just giving off advice. This is genuinely about you and the opportunity for you and your spouse to assess your relationship. Another question. Do you feel supported and appreciated by your spouse? It is really important that you feel supported and appreciated by your spouse. This may mean, that they are there when you need them, that they value your contributions. Are they actually listening to you and understanding you, paying attention to what you're saying? All of this plays a part. So be sure you're being honest about these questions.
So, what are some things that your spouse does that make you feel heard and understood?
hmm And what are some things that you do that to make sure that your spouse feels heard and understood? So, both of y'all have to assess, what are you guys doing? That's a big one.
And do you feel like you can be honest with your spouse, even if it's difficult?
hmm Do you and your spouse communicate respectfully even when you disagree?
Do you and your spouse resolve conflict? Conflict is inevitable in any relationship. However, there are healthy and unhealthy ways to resolve conflict. Healthy conflict resolution strategies include talking calmly and openly about your feelings and needs, listening to each other with empathy, and being able and willing to compromise.
hmm So certainly assess, if it's not a yes or no question, then certainly assess on a scale of like 0 to 10, with 0 being y'all ain't doing it at all, to 10 being that you are doing it all the time. And kudos, great job. Another question. Do you have any excuse me. Do you have any communication patterns that are problematic?
And what are some things that you and your spouse can do to improve your communication?
Yes. So that ends our first section, the first general section of questions that you can ask. Feel free to take a break or answer these questions at that time, but please be sure to go through each question honestly with each other and check in, right? So, section 2, your relationship dynamics. How do you and your spouse make decisions together? There are many different ways that you can make decisions together in a relationship. Some couples prefer to make decisions based on a consensus. Some prefer to divide the decisions based on, responsibilities or expertise within the specific decision that needs to be made. It's really just important that you're able to find that balance into, the decision-making process that works for both of you. So, how do you and your spouse make decisions together?
Do you feel like you can be yourself around your spouse? You should feel like you can be yourself around your spouse without fear of judgment or rejection or
Hmm.
manipulation. So,
Hmm.
this means that you can be honest about your thoughts, feelings, and needs.
Yeah. Also, do you enjoy spending time together? It is certainly important that you are taking the time to spend quality time together as a couple. This could include, all types of activities from just simple screen-free time where you're just enjoying each other's company, detached from technology, or, going out on dates, watching movies, or, playing games. Anything that fits you all perfectly where you just know that you're enjoying each other's quality time.
And what are some of your favorite memories of communicating with your spouse?
Hmm. What are some of the most challenging times you've had communicating with your spouse?
What are some things that you've learned about communicating with your spouse?
Hmm. Specifically, what are some things that you hope to teach your children about communication? This is big. It offers an opportunity for you both to reflect back. Now, again, this is not a time to dwell back on those arguments and bring them up and, hash out those old feelings. It's just a moment of reflection where, especially if you've gotten over some difficult times, how have you learned from those difficult times? How are you actively applying it for the future?
What are your hopes and dreams for your communication in the future?
Hmm. Certainly, if you have some issues that you're still working through, or just like on a scale of 0 to 10, like we talked about, what is your idea? If you're your ideal, if you're more, hovering around maybe a 5, what are your hopes? Are you hoping to get to that 10? Or are you just hoping to make the next step to a 6? It's all about progress. So don't expect perfection overnight, but just take the simple assessment to really see, hey, where are we at?
So, section 3, specific communication topics to discuss.
Mhm.
Do you feel comfortable communicating about a wide range of topics, including difficult ones? Being able to communicate about difficult topics is essential for a healthy relationship. So, this includes topics such as money, sex, and family. If you feel uncomfortable communicating about your certain topics, it is important to talk to your spouse about it.
Yeah. And especially if you haven't hit on these topics, these are very important topics that you need to make sure that you have covered, especially if you're not married yet, if you're thinking about getting married, if you're even just courting somebody at the time being. You really need to make sure that you guys have covered through these very, very important topics. So then that way you know what you're getting yourself into and you're actually prepared for marriage. That's what all of this is about, being marriage fit. So, specifically, how do you communicate about your needs and wants in the relationship?
And how do you communicate about your finances?
Or do you? All
Mhm.
of this is yes or no. Do you or do you not? If you notice you haven't, write this down as this is something you guys have to communicate about. How do you communicate about your household chores and responsibilities?
How do you communicate about your parenting philosophies and values?
hmm How do you communicate about your sex life? That's a big one.
How do you communicate about your future goals and plans?
Yeah. How do you communicate about your extended families and your friends as well?
How do you communicate about your difficult topics such as conflict, anger, and sadness?
Yeah, and I would even like to throw in depression, anxiety. That's a big thing. Your mental health matters. So, how are you communicating about this? Are you communicating about this? You certainly should be.
What are some topics or areas where you would like to improve your communication?
Mhm. Yeah, that's tying it all in. So, again, what are the things that you have or have not talked about? Now, let's head into section 4. Individual communication style. So this is kind of split up between you within yourself. This is great for single people who aren't quite in a relationship, or maybe you're early in your relationship, dating, courting, whatever. This is important for you to, kind of analyze for yourself. And then also taking the time to be open minded about your spouse and hearing what they have to say as well. So ask yourself and be sure to share with your spouse. Do you think you're a good listener?
Do you express yourself clearly and concisely?
Are you able to communicate your emotions in a healthy way? Be honest about this now.
And what are your individual communication needs? For example, do you need a lot of time to process your thoughts before you talk? Or do you prefer to talk things out right away?
That's big, especially when it comes to conflict resolution. Another one. Are you able to give and receive feedback without being critical or defensive?
Are you able to communicate your needs and wants in a direct and assertive way?
And I would even like to throw in boundaries. Are you able to communicate about those boundaries in a direct and assertive way? Along with the boundaries, the consequences of those boundaries being crossed. Are you comfortable making sure that, hey, if those boundaries are crossed, can you communicate those consequences in a direct and assertive way?
Are you able to respect your spouse's needs and wants even if they differ from yours?
Mhm. And are you able to compromise and find solutions to work, for both of you, where you're both able to live with, that compromise, not just one of you, losing whatever you want to think of it like, but are you able to compromise in a way that you both feel satisfied?
Are you are you open to feedback and willing to change your behavior?
Yes. And certainly, are you able to forgive your spouse when they make mistakes? This is big. We talk about forgiveness a lot. So, making sure that, hey, no matter what comes up, am I willing to be forgiving to my spouse?
And how do you prefer to receive information? Do
Mm.
you prefer to hear things verbally, see them written down, or experience them physically?
That's really big when it comes to communication because communication is all about getting your spouse to be receptive to whatever you are trying to communicate to them. You need to know the best way that you can offer this information to them. So be sure, again, to answer these questions honestly and openly so you get the best feedback from your spouse.
How do you process information? Do you need to I'm sorry, do you need time to think before you speak or do you prefer to talk things out as you go?
hmm Yep. Also, what are your communication triggers, right? So, what are the things that make it difficult for you to communicate effectively? This is also very important to think back on times where, you've had triggers take place and you realized, hey, if this hadn't happened, I probably would have done this a little better. Could you possibly, refrain from doing certain things? All of this is just a great opportunity to analyze. So, don't go back and, rehash those old arguments, but certainly analyze and see how you can apply it for the future.
What are your communication strengths and weaknesses? What are some things that you do well when communicating and what are some areas where you can improve?
hmm That's a good question for our single people watching as well, too. So, like we're saying, a lot of this single people can benefit certainly from as well. But couples, please be sure that you're being honest about this and communicating to your spouse what you come up with. Now, this is a great opportunity for the second part of this whole assessment, which is to ask your spouse in particular certain things that tailors towards their individual communication style, which should also really benefit your overall communication. So, how do you feel? Ask your spouse. How do you feel when I interrupt you? What are the emotions that come up during this time?
And how do you feel when I don't listen to you?
hmm Also, how do you take criticism or blame? This is just important to note, when you start acting out in a certain way, your spouse is then able to think back, hey, this is how, you respond when I act when I say this way or do these things. So let's, try to get you to be more level headed and less hot headed. So that way you're able to take in the criticism in a constructive manner.
How do you feel when I don't express my feelings?
hmm How do you feel when your spouse doesn't show you affection? This is a little peek into inside into your emotions and even your thoughts too. Does it bother you? Does it not bother you on a scale of 0 to 10?
What are some things that I can do to make you feel like I'm listening to you?
This is important for your spouse. So also ask your spouse, what are some things you can do that will help them to feel respected by you? That's huge, especially within the dynamics of masculine and a feminine relationship. Respect is really, really important. So you need to know what are the things that help your spouse feel respected by you.
And what are some things that I can do to make you feel loved and appreciated?
Yeah, I like that one in particular as a feminine for the feminine women. We love to feel loved and we love to be appreciated as well. So, what are the things that really help you to feel this? You can use these questions as a general starting point for your own communication assessment. So, like we said, go, play this back and certainly see, take step by step to answer these questions or write them down so that you're able to do this together. It's really important, though, that you're able to be honest with yourself and with your spouse. And please be open to the feedback they give you. This isn't them trying to, beat you down, bash you, or anything like that. This is just a simple assessment moment. So try to not be so triggered by the answers that you've received. Really be open minded. Communication really is a skill that takes time and practice to develop, but it is really essential for a healthy and happy relationship.
And we hope you enjoyed this assessment with your spouse, and the hope is to strengthen your relationship.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's all for tonight in this assessment. Please, we wanted to make this short so that our viewers are able to actually utilize this short video as much as they need without all the talk. So please make sure to take the time to do this assessment. And we really do hope the best for your relationship.
Yep. And thank you for joining us tonight, you Blueprint family, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. So
Yeah.
hopefully you can take this assessment. Oh, we're doing great. Thank you.
Yeah. Peace, peace.
Yeah, we're doing great. Thank you. Yep. And so if you know anybody who needs to take this assessment, please share this video with them, like and subscribe to our videos, and we will see you Monday. Monday, same time, same place. You all have a wonderful weekend. Peace.